Good morning, everyone, and welcome to episode 8 of our SDGC Final Fantasy retrospective, in which we are going over all 15 mainline. I almost said all 8, all 15 mainline Final Fantasy games, and talking about what we liked, what we didn't like, and giving them their overall proper place in the series ranking. As always, I'll go over the ground rules really quick. These are the 15 core Final Fantasy titles only. We are not talking about spin-offs like Final Fantasy Tactics or 1310-2 or Lightning Returns, although we will be tackling those on subsequent podcasts. And of course, this being episode 8, today we're going to be talking about Final Fantasy VIII, one of the more divisive titles in the series. And joining us today, Natalie Natalie Flores, I should use your whole name, from RPGSite is joining us once again. Natalie, it's always nice having you on.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm excited to share my spicy Final Fantasy VIII
I'm ready
opinions.
to consume them. And we also have my friend Tom Johnson from GameRanx. Now I owe Tom here a public apology, a very public apology to Tom because he was supposed to join us for the Final Fantasy 6 and 7 talks. But of course,
forgot
I
about
fucking
me.
forgot to add him to the Discord call.
Top
And
10
so I
anime
tweeted
betrayals, John.
I tweeted out what
I
a great
thought we were
conversation we
friends.
had, and then Tom literally is like, "Wow," and I was like, "Oh shit, Tom, fuck." So Tom is here.
Man.
He's gonna be joining us for the rest of our Final Fantasy discussions.
Can't believe
So
Tom
sorry.
couldn't
It's
join
all
me in
Ground-
bashing
I'm
Final
used to
Fantasy
disappointment
7.
at this point.
Tom, it looks like ground control forgot about Major Tom.
Oh
no.
I
man!
fucking hate you.
Wow! Wow!
I'd be ashamed of that, but I'm not.
No, you
All right,
shouldn't be.
guys. So, Final Fantasy VIII, a game that I don't hate and a game that I don't love. Boy, this is a difficult one for me to talk about because I really like when I first played Final Fantasy VIII. It came out in 1999, I believe, or 98. I was 17 or 18 years old when I first played it, and I really loved the first half of the game and really didn't like the second half. So I'm pretty evenly split on this one, but I want to start with Tom, simply because I neglected to add him on our previous episodes, and I still feel really bad.
This is his apology bouquet. You go first.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm gonna kick it over to Tom first. Tom, I don't know, like you're a big Final Fantasy guy, just like the rest of us. Um, what like when did you first play Final Fantasy VIII, and what were your initial impressions of it? It
Oh, I probably played. When did this game come out? What was the year?
was like 98.
98.
Like
Okay,
98.
so I probably played around 99, 2000. It was it was definitely pre PS2 when I played this one. But I was just finally getting back into games after a brief. There were like 2 or 3 years between me getting tired of the Nintendo 64 and my uncle giving me his PS1.
Oh, nice.
So I was like playing all I could, and I like Final Fantasy VIII was one that I actually was probably the Final Fantasy game I didn't get into. I didn't hate it, but I wasn't like as into it as I was with like 9 or 10 or like even 12 or 13. Like it's probably the one I took the longest to actually burn through, just because like it didn't jive with me in a way that like it did with most other people. Not to say I'm not one of the people who's like, I hate this game, it's not good. Like I still think it's fine. It just didn't have the power to drive me. I especially like how it gets kind of weird towards the back third.
Yeah, there's like
Yeah.
this whole, and by the way, just like for anybody listening, of course, there will be heavy spoilers dropped in, not just this conversation, but all of our conversations past, past conversations and the ones going forward.
Yeah.
And I think what Tom is referring to is that weird storyline twist at the end, and this is where it kind of went off the rails for me, where you find out that everybody was at the same orphanage and you've all got amnesia, and that was I don't know, like Natalie, you tell me what you think, but for me, that was a bridge too far. I was like, okay, like this is like I get that it's a Final Fantasy game and there's going to be elements of the story that are ridiculous, but that was too insane for me to swallow, Like
I agree. I remember getting to that part and I was just like I messaged a friend. I was like, wait, did what? So I do think it's one of the flaws that Final Fantasy VIII has. I don't think Final Fantasy VIII is a flaw-free game. If anything, it's one of the most flawed ones, but I love it in spite of those flaws. So I do agree. I think that part was a bit much for a Final Fantasy game.
It was like if Square Enix decided to go, hey, you know what? an RPG cliche is the main hero has amnesia, but what if everyone had it?
Well,
That powerful.
what's
But
frustrating
what if
is
they sorry, and then like what if they figure it out and then it's a time and space traversal
Oh
romp?
my god,
Yeah.
yeah. Like that we haven't even
what
Derek,
like
go ahead. You look like you
what's
were gonna say-
frustrating to me is there are very small hints. If I recall, only like twice in the game before that point, that using Guardian Forces, which is the FF8's version of the summons in the series,
the GFs.
will cause people to eventually lose things like their memory. There are tiny hints about this, but like considering this ends up being like a major detail, like wow, we all conveniently forgot like most of our past and the fact that we all knew each other. I feel like that should have been spelled out a little more heavily, that is a thing, not being part of like too specific. They spend more time talking about how much fucking Zell loves hot dogs than they do talking about how Guardian Forces will strip away your memories. And
But
hot
he
dogs
does love
don't
hot dogs.
hot dogs don't ever matter to the plot, yo.
But
So-
can I just point out that the only proper way to refer to GFs are GIFs? Like that's all I call them now. Like I'm summoning
John, you're a fucking monster.
I'm just letting you know, man. I'm just letting you know.
Actually, they're pronounced GIFs.
No, it's a GIF. It's a fucking GIF.
I have a question, like mechanic wise, because we dove right into like story stuff and experience
Yeah.
stuff, but what like how did y'all jive with the draw system?
Junction
Not
system?
at all.
So
Okay.
I loved it.
yeah, I want to say
got like I got the minimum required Guardian Forces to make my way through that game because I just could not care.
I didn't
Yeah.
like it either.
the draw system isn't the problem to me. The draw system would have been fine were it not paired up with the junction system.
Yes.
Ooh boy.
Because you got penalized for using what you drew. Because you're
casting from
directly
stats.
lowering your own stats by casting spells or using abilities because of the way they worked together. You're like, draw 99 of this spell. Okay, cool. Now your attack is really high. I hope you never want to cast that spell because if you do, you're going to visibly become weaker each time you do.
Yeah. Well, and then on top of that, like, so because people say the main complaint people have about the draw mechanic is that it encourages you to sit at low level enemies and just draw Blizzard over and over again until everybody has 100 Blizzards. But you wouldn't really feel the urge to do that if it weren't for the fact that having 100 Blizzards meant you had 100 Blizzards to junction to your attack or whatever. Because you realistically don't need to stockpile up 100 Blizzards if that's just your stockpile to cast from. So
you can stockpile a bunch of ultimas and junction them and make yourself fucking invincible.
yeah. Well, normally you can't find that many ultimas in the game, so like you wouldn't, the really good shit you would never really just sit there and draw over and over again. So drawing was okay had it not been paired up with junctioning magic to stats. I think that mechanically one of the best things FF8 could have done from a smart design standpoint is just make the Guardian Forces give you a flat stat boost depending on the GF equipped. And then you can equip a bunch of GFs and they give you flat stat boosts and you're not junctioning magic to those stats.
Well,
yeah, that'd be awesome.
I want to kick it over to Natalie because Natalie, if you like the draw system.
I do. Despite the fact that I read about video games, I suck at them a lot. So the draw and junction system allowed me to... Final Fantasy VIII is the only Final Fantasy that I've replayed from start to finish, and I'm pretty sure it's because the draw system makes it easy for me. I appreciate it. It's weird, and it doesn't work for a lot of people, but it let me actually finish it until the end for my replay. So I like it.
I think my biggest issue with the draw system and something that really hasn't been touched on yet is the fact that and in a weird way I'm going to tie this into mental illness. So like I don't just suffer from anxiety, I suffer from OCD, and I felt compelled to junction everything or to draw everything I fucking could.
Yep.
And sometimes it would make those battles drag on. Like even just battles against like, like low level enemies, they would drag on twice as long as they had to because I was drawing fucking everything because I felt like that was the most viable way. I mean, it wasn't a feeling. That was the most viable way to power up your characters, to power level your characters was drawing, but you had to invest a lot of time in that. You couldn't just, like, for example, drop a materia into a slot like you could in 7 and go on your way and fight a bunch of battles and level up that materia. You had to sit there and constantly draw magic from every enemy, and it made battles. It had to have extended my play time on my first playthrough by at least 30%. Just I felt like I spent more time drawing from enemies than I did actually fighting them. And by the end of the game, I was like, holy shit! Like I must have spent at least 30 hours just fucking drawing.
Jesus.
At least,
Wow.
you know.
One thing I will say is I don't know if this is the case with any of the console, like the modern console re-releases, but all of the recent PC re-releases of the Final Fantasy games have basically the cheats. You have like the built-in boost. So if you play the FF8 PC port, actually that's an older one. Thinking about it, they never did like a modern version of that. Anyway, if you play the FF8 PC port, you can just give all of your characters like a fairly decent like chunk of magic pretty early on and avoid a lot of the like draw grind for a huge chunk of the game. And I really appreciate that Square does that with their, again, I hope they do it with their console versions too, with their PC re-releases. Because stuff like that, FF9 having like the speed up and the AP granting, FF12 having like AP and guild granting, that stuff really helps reduce the grind and makes it easier for people who just want to get in and enjoy the story, because not everybody's gonna want to play 20 hours worth of grinding.
So so that leads me to another question I want to kick off to Tom first, and then but you know, we'll kick this to both our guests. But so jumping off of what Derek just said, we're seeing re-releases for 7. We're seeing re-releases for 9 and 10 and 12. Where the fuck is Final Fantasy 8 in all of this? Like,
That's a really good
I
question.
know.
like that doesn't make any fucking sense to me, right?
Oh,
Like it's being treated as the ugly child, and I'm offended on its behalf.
It's just so, it's very, very strange. Like I like what at that same Nintendo Direct when they announced 7 and 9, like 7 popped up and I was like, oh, here it is. We're, you know, there's 7, 8, 9, and they were like Final Fantasy 7, 9, 10, 10, 2, and 12 all coming to Switch. And I just I had this image of Squall just being slapped across the face by Reggie as hard as he could.
but you know what would be great if they did just release 8 and be like, you guys all forgot about the announcement.
Somebody boot Finn off this call.
So I think a big part of it has to do with so if you look at like the 3D games, 10 onward are a lot easier to re-release and just in a higher resolution and lightly cleaned up textures. But then like 7, 8, and 9 are in this weird place where they're kind of ugly games unless you do some heavy work to clean them up.
But doesn't it already have a PC port? Just
and it's terrible. It
it's a really
runs
bad port.
terribly.
Is it
the
is
music,
it really?
Yeah, it doesn't run very well. The music is just trash in the PC version because it uses like a different MIDI format or something, so it just sounds really bad. The textures and everything are still very, very low quality. Like they're equivalent to the PSX version. And the thing is, like 7, they've done some cleaning up to and re-release. 9 got that really extensive remastering that I think looks really good.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. I can't
but
wait
they
to play
also-
it again on Switch.
But they also gave it that fucking shitty menu from the port, from the iOS port.
It's just the new. It's got the new fonts and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't like it, but
Anyway,
but-
sorry to derail, but
So I think that 8 will come, but 8 is going to require, like 9 did, a lot more effort than something like FF7 did to clean up, because FF7 graphically was really quite simple compared to 8 and 9. And that's another thing. FF8, I mean, if you look at 8 came a year after Final Fantasy 7.
It wasn't long, yeah.
Yeah, it's a year or a year
And
and
it
a
was
half
a
or something.
huge jump in quality.
And it looks
Character models alone.
tremendously. I mean, the environments, the character models, the animations, everything looks so much more detailed and complex. And the quality of the FMVs was so much better. I mean, Square really picked up between 7 and 8 when it came to presentation quality, I think.
So let's talk about that, right? Talking, you know, while we're on the subject,
I think
of
Finn had a
character models,
thing.
Let's talk about the most interesting
Sounds
point
like
of conversation I think about 8, which is the characters. Final Fantasy VIII. And it's interesting how my feelings on Squall evolved over time. Because when I first played this game, I was an angsty teenager. You know, I was like, "Oh, fuck the system. I don't care about anything." and so, like, you know, I was like, "Yeah, I relate to Squall because he's dark and moody and nobody understands his pain." And now I look back and I replayed 8 about 2 years ago, and I was like, "What a whiny, insufferable little shit."
Oh yeah, he
this guy is.
sucks.
Like, I was like, "Oh
Because he's a
God."
teenager.
Aw.
Natalie, tell us why you.
Natalie, shit. But so like I don't know. Like I'm playing as like it's like they took Cloud but like dialed his moodiness up a little bit. Character design wise, I think his character design is really cool. In fact, I like all the character designs in Final Fantasy VIII. But
Yeah.
He's extremely hot.
but he is like he is definitely
He's got that ice on the fringe.
Yeah, that like it all comes the scar, like it all comes together, right? But and let's face it, dude, the gunblade is one of the coolest fucking weapons in the like. I love
It's
the
so
fact that you can
stupid,
like
and I
hit
love it.
R1 and pull the trigger right at the right moment for extra damage. That like little stuff like me, I just thought was that was really fucking cool.
That gunblade is just like big dick energy.
Yes,
just, like,
it is. Hell yeah.
and just
Hell yeah.
amazing.
Was waiting for a big dick energy reference on this podcast, and we finally have it.
I'm glad to deliver.
But
Okay, so
like,
here's a good question then, John. Is everyone who is your favorite character, playable character?
well, let's kick this off to Natalie first because she really likes Squall.
Oh, I really love Squall. He's not my favorite character. He's my second favorite character, but I do think the reasons why I love him tie to my favorite character, which is Renoa. I think she gets a lot of undeserved hate just for being
Yeah.
someone who, I mean, she's not a soldier. She is an everyday girl who wants to make a change, who wants to separate from her father and form her own identity, similar to Squall. And I think she gets a lot of hate over just being an everyday person who can't fight. You know, she doesn't have a gunblade. She doesn't have like a whip like Quistis.
She's
But
got a
she's
dog though,
still...
Natalie. She's got a
Yeah,
dog.
she
Hell yeah.
projected. Yeah, and I think that's arguably better than all of them combined. But
Yeah, at a certain
that's
point, you
another
just shoot a
subject.
dog and it
I
explodes.
completely forgot about the dog.
How could
How
you?
can you forget about Angelo? He's like amazing. Or is it a girl? I'm not
I
sure.
think it's a. I think
Angelo is
it's
a
boy dog.
think
kind of a masculine name by default, but I guess it can be whatever you name it.
No, I think it is a boy. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too.
But yeah, I
Hmm.
think she's a flawed character, and I think people are so against women just being flawed and
Mhm.
allowed to be like everyday people. They don't have to, you know, save everyone in a battle in order to be strong. I think Renoa really exemplifies what it means to be to be strong in other ways, to possess strength in other ways besides physical combat. And I think she, at the end of the day, she's just a woman who's been dealt a pretty bad hand in life and who wants to be loved and who wants to love, and she wants the attention from someone who actually cares about her. And I think the ways in which she really tries to make the world better for everyone are admirable, even if they sometimes fail. And yeah, and I think her and Squall are very similar. Like, they're both people who don't have the love from parental figures that they wish they had. Squall just ended up becoming a much more negative person who focuses on the absence and the loneliness, but Renoa tries to make the best out of the situation. And I think that's why they work so well as a couple and why they're my favorite Final Fantasy romance, just because they really play well off of each other. And yeah, and I love her. I can go on about her for a long time, but I'll stop there.
Yeah, Natalie, that's a great fucking explanation. Wow, I'm impressed. That was really good. Thank you so much.
No problem.
That was
Thank
great.
you.
Tom, what about you, man? Who's your favorite Final Fantasy VIII character? And don't you fucking say Zell. Don't you?
Nah,
dare
I
say
like
fucking Zell.
Laguna a lot.
Oh, yeah. Oh, he's really good, dude. He's got the best musical theme in the whole game.
He absolutely does.
Man with the
Yep.
machine gun is dope.
What was it about
Yeah.
Laguna, man?
I don't know. I just dug his whole vibe. Like,
He was
He's a
hot.
fucking dweeb.
it was like his whole thing. The way they wrote that character was much different from like anytime you bounce between, it would be like, oh, this feels like completely different from Squall and Zell's bullshit. This sounds someone who kind of has a mission.
He's Squall's dad too, if I remember correctly, right?
Oh my god, once sorry for the aside and for the interruption,
Oh, no,
but
no,
I wrote an article about Final Fantasy and motherhood, and I legitimately had someone in the comments like, the game doesn't state that Squall is Laguna's son, and I was like, context clues?
It's
Yeah, they never say it, but
Foreshadowing?
it's like if you don't think it is, then you're
Implications?
kind of an idiot.
It's pretty
Yeah.
heavily spelled out for you.
Storytelling?
Yeah.
No,
What?
but Natalie, don't you see if they don't specifically tell you, it's not true?
That's like saying,
Right?
that's like saying Shadow isn't Realm's father. You
Yeah.
know, it's like, okay, they don't ever come out and say it, but come on, he fucking is. You know, like it's
Sorry
the
for
same
the
thing.
aside,
With
but
no,
yeah,
no,
it was just wild. Like we were in our staff Discord and we were just like, how do you play the game and not realize that Laguna is Squall's
I have
father?
no idea.
But
Is it
anyway,
like-
keep
and then,
going.
like, that-
Going, Tom.
Especially given like the parallels they draw between the two characters.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
like you might as well write it on the screen. Like
Yeah.
They damn near spell it out by the time you get to the end of that,
basically- yeah.
particular aside.
So-
yeah.
Gaming,
Tom-
right? Yeah.
Tom, were you like me in really wanting like a separate game just starring Laguna and Zabak and Ward?
I would have played that, yeah, in
I
a
would've played
second.
the fucking shit out of that, dude.
Final Fantasy VIII too.
Yeah, and like honestly, I'll take it now. Like I really love the character of Laguna, and god damn, his battle theme was so hype. Like, fuck,
His battle theme was the best thing from that game.
All them
I-
bloopy
I-
synths.
I would completely. It's like do 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 do. Yeah, oh, it's so fucking good. I still remember.
Man with the machine gun is so good.
I still remember. It's called The Man with the Machine Gun. That's just that's a great fucking track. Tom, anything else you want to say on Laguna?
Nah, like I've said, this is one of the ones I replayed the least. So like my memory, like we're starting with the one that I have the least memory of.
Of course we are. Of course we are. Finn, what about you, man? What's a favorite character from Final Fantasy VIII?
All right, for me, I'm sorry, it is Zell. But not
Jesus
from,
Christ.
not from a story perspective. He was my favorite character to play as. His duel system.
Oh, it's so
Where you
Yeah,
got-
he is a fun character. Yeah, I'll agree.
I
with
mean,
you.
I appreciated his comic relief, whatever, but
Comic.
for me, the reason Zell always stands out is because when I was playing that game as a kid, inputting those button commands and trying to get as many mashed in as possible before the time ran out was more engaging and more fun than any Final Fantasy Super Attack, Limit Break, what have you, to that point. And it still stands up to me. So for me, Zell epitomized how much fun I had playing the game. And for this game in particular, I prioritized that above the story aspects, because for me, Final Fantasy VIII's story isn't the strongest point. It's moments, and for me, Zell's attacks and his dual limit break and seeing how many cool combos I could pull off was way more fun than other characters. Now, I will say, Kyros has the best design with his little arm blades and his assassin strike. Like,
Oh yeah, he's
Yeah.
really cool. Yeah,
Very
he's not much of a
satisfying.
character, but he has the best look to me. But Zell was the most fun to play, and that's why when you told Tom not to pick Zell, I was like, oh no, should I pick someone else real quick? And then I thought about picking Irvine, but I don't hate myself, so no.
Derek, what about you, man?
So this is hard because I think there are two characters that I really like. It's hard for me to narrow this down.
Is it Raijin or Fujin?
No. Natalie, you kind of already went over everything great about Renoa, which is nice because I get to not worry about that.
Right, Jennifer Fuji.
Oh, also on Renoa, I just wanted to say, don't you think it was a bit revolutionary for the woman in the relationship to pursue the man? Like,
Yeah,
like
you don't
now
ever
it
see
doesn't
that.
seem like a big thing, but back then it was
It's
like
still
she's
kind of
the one
not
pursuing
very common
Squall.
in these
Yeah.
kind of
Squall's
in this
just
kind
like,
of media.
Whatever.
But
Renoa dying on her bed, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever.
so
All right, go ahead.
smaller aside is Keistis, who I really her character arc really falls flat after a pretty early on. You kind of go through like the most important beats for her pretty early,
Yeah.
I feel like, but it's a really interesting story to have for a character to set like a secondary character up. The idea that she's this like was this A student and this ace in the field and gets to be your teacher even though she's your age, but she's not good. She moved forward too quickly and she's not a good enough instructor to keep being that. So she has to step down and go back to just being an agent. And I think that's very interesting because we don't talk enough about how, like, sometimes you do, like, you're good and you get pushed forward too quickly. Oh no, we lost Finn. Oh no, we got Finn back. Yay.
Yay.
But like, people get pushed forward too
You got
quickly,
swallowed into space and time.
you know, in life and in their careers. You know, and they're not ready for that. You know, and that didn't mean that she was a bad at anything before. She just wasn't ready for that point, wasn't ready for being an instructor, even as good as she was. And it's a small thing. Like I said, it's a character arc that they go through very early in the game and then don't really continue with. But one of the most impactful things about good, like, narrative heavy games is the ideas that they can impart on their audience, especially when they're young and impressionable. And that's a good little message to send that I think gets washed over in a lot of the bigger stuff about FF8. But I'm gonna go on the Squall Defense Force here for a little bit. Yeah, because here's the thing. Squall is obnoxious. I think he's intended to be obnoxious because Squall's a fucking teenager. He's 18 years old, and we're more in his head than just about any Final Fantasy protagonist. Is there any other, like, teenage main protagonist who we spend as much time in their internal thoughts?
I don't think so.
I don't
Though
think
I
so.
The complaints about Titus mirror the complaints that people tend to have about Squall, which is they're so annoying and they complain a lot.
Yeah.
But it's like,
God forbid they
men
show
have
weakness.
emotions too.
Well, to be
Yeah,
fair,
they
I
have
do think that
weakness.
Squall is incredibly
He
obnoxious.
is
There's points where you just
obnoxious.
want to be like, grow the fuck up, but that's the point. He's 18, you know, and antisocial, and like, that's how antisocial teenagers are. It's actually a fairly realistic portrayal of what a lot of teenagers, especially a lot of teenage boys, actually feel like, rather than the, like, stupid, like, Japanese culture, gaming culture, anime culture has this tendency to put forward 17-year-old superheroes that are emotionally invincible and ready to handle the most fucked up shit of the world, and that's not how teenagers are, y'all. And I think the big difference between Squall and everyone else in the cast, why they don't come across as annoying, even though you have very, very quickly a fairly broad, like, cast of characters, is that you don't get to see inside the thoughts of everybody else. It's pretty much just Squall.
It's the Squall show.
Squall's your POV character, so he's the thing is, like, as you come to find out about all these other characters who have their neuroses and their anxieties, and they're all just teenagers, like, you know, Zell, Selphie, Irving, Keestis, Renoa, like, all of them, if they had been the POV character, you'd have seen a lot of angst from them too. But you don't see that because there's a difference between what we internalize and what we put out. And Squall, if you actually take the time to break down his talking to himself or his internalized thought bubbles versus the conversations he has, he's still kind of a prick, you know, but, like, there's a big difference between what he's internalizing and what he's projecting.
So I just want to, Derek, I just want to point out, if they do ever remake Final Fantasy VIII, I want them to kind of retcon Selphie as somebody who just likes taking a lot of selfie pictures.
Oh, and you
I hate
groan
you.
at me for shame. bro.
I'm just saying that this is what I want.
Sounds beautifully put, Derek.
So no, Derek, that was great, dude. That was a, like, Natalie and Derek bring the fucking conversation.
It just bothers me because, like, I was an angsty teenage boy, and, like, I identified a lot with Squall when I was younger, and then I grew up and I was a little older than Squall, and I hated that. And then I went back and looked at it, and I was like, that was the teenage and, like, boy experience
and
for a ton of people.
Daddy, as you said on Twitter the other
Yeah.
day. Now you're just a complete daddy.
Total daddy mode.
So I think there's one final thing that I want to talk about Final Fantasy VIII, and it's my problems with the storyline, and a lot of them really. And I think for me, the focal point will be Ultimecia, the villain.
Yeah.
No, Ultimecia is no.
Queen.
What was that?
She's a queen. I love her.
So she's noteworthy because, like, she's really the first main Final Fantasy female, like, you know, woman antagonist. And and like you could say Cloud of Darkness, but Cloud of Darkness really isn't a woman. Cloud of Darkness is just like an evil that took the form of a, took the form of it. But Ultimecia is the actual first woman antagonist in the series, as far as I'm concerned. And my problems with that character were that I still like, and maybe somebody here can help explain it to me, but I still don't really know what her end state was apart from
They really don't
compressing time and
explain.
space. Like,
And
I
what
know
does
she
what does
wanted to
time
do it.
compression even mean? They don't really get into that.
No, they don't.
I know that's what they wanted. I know that's what she wanted to do, but I still don't understand why she wanted to do it. And my problems with Ultimecia's motivations are it's the same problems I have with Vayne Solidor in Final Fantasy 12, and that I don't feel like the enmity between those characters and the party was earned. They don't even confront. I mean, I guess you could say that Ultimecia has been confronting the party all along because she was, inhabiting
By way of Adia.
Adia. But you don't really know much you don't even really see her until the very final confrontation. And she's just like, I'm gonna compress all time and space, bitch. And like that's it. Like I'm fucking doing it.
That's
And
big dick energy.
that is
right
big
there.
dick energy. And it's a super evil thing to do, but I don't understand why she was doing it. Does anybody, I mean, and maybe I'm just not remembering it right, but do they ever really explain why she wanted to compress all of time and space and absorb
Not that I
everything?
remember.
Nah, I think she was like, yeah, I want to do that shit.
Yeah, they
And
don't
she
explain
tried to
why
do it.
or what very well. So the final
Yeah.
the time compressed world being like the final chunk of the game, like then kind of stops making sense for an extended period of time because of that.
Well, see, and somebody, I had this conversation with, I want to see what you guys think about this. I had this conversation with somebody, another huge Final Fantasy fan, and they said, well, John, that's not any different than Kefka's motivations in Final Fantasy 12. He just wanted to destroy everything. I was like, yeah, but he is very clearly psychotic and unbalanced because of something that happened to him. He was the first experimental Magitech Knight, and it just completely snapped his mind. And that is made very clear to you throughout the game. You are, he commits acts of genocide. He is gleeful about the evil he's causing. I don't get that same kind of gleeful evil from Ultimecia's character. She seems completely balanced and very aware of her actions and very sane. But there's no motivation. Like, she's evil, but there's no motivation for that evil. Like, Kefka's motivation was his complete lack of
Yeah, we had
empathy.
that conversation with 6. There's a difference between a character who is evil for reasons that aren't particularly well explained and a character who is evil explicitly for the sake of
Right.
committing evil
There-
acts.
there's a difference between the love of destruction for the sole purpose of the love of destruction, and then there's her motive, which is I want to do this because
She seems to be on a mission, and that mission has definite reasoning, but we don't know why ever.
Yeah, exactly.
They
and,
also broadly don't explain very well the whole sorceress thing, period. Like, we know there was a war against sorceresses, and sorceresses are bad in general, and they've all been evil. And in
But why?
hindsight, can we talk about this? The game simultaneously does not delve into the concept of all of these woman magic users are all evil, but it doesn't analyze how problematic that could be, but also is it misogynist enough to just outright say that women who cast magic should be burned at the stake? So it's where the fuck is this falling?
I was gonna ask Natalie what she thought about that, because today, Natalie, that comes off as a bit problematic to me. If you think about it, the game is all these women sorceresses are evil, every one of them.
Mhm.
And I just I don't know, today that comes off as kind of gross, but maybe, I don't know. What do you think?
I think I would have to replay it because the times that I played through that game, they were very different. They were very far back. So I think I would need to replay it to look at it with the lens that I see the world now. But as far as back then, I don't think I had any problems with it. But again, I would definitely need to replay it now. I just remember thinking that Ultimecia was really cool. She just shows up at the end, and I think that's kind of fascinating that you only see the real villain until the very end. I know why it doesn't work for some people, but for me it kind of worked. She was just this constant presence throughout the game that you definitely felt her presence, and you felt the urgency to stop her, despite the fact that she only really shows up until the very end. And I thought that was a fascinating way to present the main antagonist. But yeah, I would have to replay it to reevaluate that.
Which is weird, Natalie, because it seems like Square Enix is doing whatever they can to keep you from replaying it.
I
Like,
know,
I
it's
don't
so
get it.
trashy.
It's really weird. And I'll touch on her final boss fight real quick because those are some of
Well,
like
Finn
you know,
has a
those are,
thing.
like,
You
the
keep
epic
passing over
NPCs.
Finn, my
Her
man.
theme, the extreme,
is great.
iconic, one of the best final battle themes ever.
You're not wrong.
The
It's no
extreme is
dancing mad, but it's pretty good.
It's great. It's really, really good.
So good.
I feel like her final boss fight suffered a bit from that JRPG trope of, you know, this isn't even my final form.
Yeah.
There's what 3 or 4 different forms.
There's 4.
right, that
She
you
has
go
4
through.
different forms. Well, there's her. Well, technically, so you fight Ultimecia, and then you fight Griever, and then you fight Griever Ultimecia, and then you fight like final Ultimecia. And by final Ultimecia, I was like, holy shit! I was like, how much more is there? She had one of the creepiest final boss designs in the entire series.
Yeah.
Like, oh, like, and I didn't even notice that like her human form was hanging underneath until like years later when I went back and I played it again. I was like, whoa! I was like, oh, that is creepy. So I mean, her final and like she had that empty face, and it's just she had a great. She had
Very
a great
eldritch.
final boss form. Like that was
Like she showed up until the end, but she made sure that she was memorable.
yeah.
You know, that design is so good.
Yeah, they really nailed her because it wasn't something that we'd seen before. Because like Kefka and Sephiroth were like these, like basically angels. Like, you know, it's like, oh, they're angels, okay, and it's an inversion of, you know, Christianity, and there's all these themes here. She was like just straight up demonic. Like there was nothing angelic about her character design. Yeah, Finn just actually dropped a picture of it in the Discord chat there. Like, look at that. Like, man, that is crazy. And I never really paid attention to what was hanging underneath her, but that is her human form with her arms crossed underneath, which is just so creepy. And if you take that character model and you separate it from that black background, you can see all of time and space being absorbed into her, which is really, really crazy as well. Like the attention to detail is just great.
John,
What's up?
I want to shift the topic real quick because we've been talking about, you know, characters, story, all that kind of fun stuff, but we're missing the core thing that makes FF8 better than almost all other games, and that is Triple Triad.
No,
The
fuck
single
no.
branded side
No.
quest in
No.
a fantasy game.
We don't talk about Triple Triad here.
Are you kidding me? I unabashed. That is
Triple
my favorite
Triad's
thing
so
about
good.
FF8.
If they
No,
would just
love
make
it.
a mobile triple triad, like
Yeah, and I played it because I loved it.
Oh, they did?
No.
Yeah.
I think
What?
this is the Final Fantasy VIII topic that Natalie and I are going to agree on, and hopefully Tom as well. Is that Triple Triad is just not good.
Look,
Are you guys
I just
kidding me?
hate
can we
all
at least
card
agree?
games
Can we at least
in
agree it's
games.
so much better than FF9's Tetramaster?
No,
Yeah.
it's not.
No,
Are
it's
you
not
kidding
at
me?
all.
No, the
Oh,
worst
no,
part about
no.
FF9 was that Tetramaster was so weak compared to Triple Triad.
Tetramaster was actually an enjoyable diversion.
Oh, you guys! Oh, I've never
No.
felt.
I
more
still don't
shame.
understand
It
the
makes me feel
rules to
better. I think all of
Tetramaster.
them are bad, Finn.
Yeah, I don't think any of them are great, but
God, Triple Triad was so much fun. I spent more time collecting all of the cards in that game
and then you
than
wasted.
I did playing the actual
Think
game.
of all that time you wasted, Finn. All those minutes.
That was like The
Amazing.
Witcher 3 and Gwent before The
Playing
Witcher
Triple
3 and
Triad.
Gwent.
Yeah,
And I
exactly.
actually, Gwent is one of my favorite parts about Witcher 3.
No, I knew it. Okay.
They
It's
put
so, look,
uh,
a well-made card game is rare, and that is one of them.
No, it's real. Tom, you
They-
sounded like you wanted to cut on
they
this.
put Tetramaster as like a side thing in Final Fantasy 11, and when I was playing that, I probably put like 50 hours into Tetramaster. On
Didn't they
there.
put triple triad into FF14?
Yeah, Triple Triad
Yeah.
14.
Triad, yeah.
And
That's why 14's better than 11.
Think about
Yes!
all those hours you wasted, Finn. Hours that
Fucking
you could have
fighting,
spent
Finn.
doing something else.
Doing it, sir.
That's so tragic.
Oh,
Finn. You
That's
wasted
the
all
wrong
that time.
thing.
Also, since we've been touching on the story and the characters and whatnot, can we talk about how Final Fantasy VIII is really fascinating because in comparison to other Final Fantasy games, it really encourages theorizing and speculation. Like even today, like people still talk about the squad's really dead or Renoa is Ultimecia, and I think that whether they're true or not, which I don't think, at least Squall being dead, I don't think that's true at all. But it really encouraged theory making and speculation in a way that other Final Fantasy games didn't, in my opinion.
I remember when they had really cool spacesuits.
Oh yeah.
You mean regular spacesuits?
Nah, man.
I remember that. I fucking I remember that. I mean, look, Final Fantasy VIII did a lot of cool shit, right? Like it sounds like I'm sitting here dumping on it.
It's a very mixed bag. I think its highs are
It-
very high and its lows are very low. And it's only a couple of changes away from like serious greatness.
But I think Natalie, I want to see what you think. Like that opening was hype. Like the opening of the game is fucking.
Oh,
hype.
yeah.
That opening, like, it just stays in your memory. Like, even today, like, I'm pretty sure we all just remember it. It's so
That moment where
memorable.
Cypher slashes and we see how he
You
gets
get
the scar.
feathers. Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
Compared to Final Fantasy VII's opening, Final Fantasy VIII was like, it wasn't just build up. It had the action moments. It had that swelling score. It really got you invested. It almost made it more disappointing when the game just started like a normal RPG. It's like all this awesome stuff, and now we're at the start of the game.
Now I'm in the
What-
hospital.
It's like the gunblade falls from the sky and slams into the ground, and they're running at each other, and the words Final Fantasy VIII flash across the screen, and
It's a very, very well-directed opening.
You know, what is it? Liberi Fatali is playing. It's just like, oh god, this is so fucking good. Like, oh, it really.
Final Fantasy VIII soundtrack is just the best
Yeah.
one, in my
This-
opinion, along with 13.
I'll agree with you on that. 100%.
Let's let this be.
Like the
'cause we're-
romance theme, the Eyes on Me. Like, I want Eyes on Me to play at my wedding. That's
This
how
is-
good it is.
I was
is a
going to
very
say,
good-
we're running really tight on time, but I wanted the last thing to be, if you have never in your life, like, just belted Eyes on Me in the car while driving alone at night, like, then you have not truly lived, my friends.
Eyes on Me is better than One Winged Angel in terms of vocal.
Eyes on Me is the single best
terms of
vocal track in
everything.
the franchise, bar none.
It's,
That's
it's
my award
favorite
bait.
vocal
Yeah.
theme song
Oh,
of the
hands down.
franchise. Yeah, it's so good.
I like.
It's
Memories
one of the
Light
best. It's
originally.
one of the best vocal themes in gaming, I would argue. Again, period.
Same.
Also, shout
Yeah.
out to that the ball scene, the ballroom dance scene.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
oh.
it's so
When it
good.
turns out
People-
Squall can actually dance.
Not only was it so good, but people forget how good it was for the time. When that CG movie came out, when that cutscene came out, like I remember back in the old days of dial-up, you would download that file and watch it and just be like blown away. Just aging ourselves right there.
Yeah.
I just love the memes nowadays that we get out of it, where everyone was
Best
like,
looking
"You're
guy
the most-
here.
You're the best looking guy here," and then Squall's face is pixel.
Oh, yeah.
Uh,
I forgot about those memes. All right. Well, I think we're like like Derek said, we're bumping up on our time limit here. But I wanted to thank Natalie and Tom for joining us, and you guys, if I'm not mistaken, you will both be joining us for the rest of our Final Fantasy conversations. I hope.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Thank you everybody for listening, and we will be back a little later with episode 9, where we'll be discussing Final Fantasy 14. I'm just kidding. It's going to be Final Fantasy 9. Thanks for,
Yee.
AKA maybe
thanks for
the
hanging out
secret
with
best
us,
one.
buddy.
I'm
It's
so excited to talk about 9.
Yeah, I'm really.
Yeah.
Yeah, so am I.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
All right, everybody. Have a good weekend, and we will see you later.